All right, let's talk about what happens after you survive a toxic person. We're going to move past just getting by. We're going to dive right into the neuroscience of what it actually means to heal and how your brain can literally rebuild itself from the ground up. You know, it's a question that can be just heartbreaking, right? For years, all the research really focused on the damage, on the trauma. But then, a little while ago, scientists started asking this different, way more hopeful question. What's the deal with the people who don't just survive, but who somehow come out the other side stronger than they were before? So first, we have to get really honest about what being in a toxic relationship actually does to you, to your biology. This isn't just about your feelings getting hurt. We're talking about a full-on physiological state of emergency. And look, that might sound like an exaggeration, but it's not. It is scientifically on the money. Studies show that the constant chronic stress from things like manipulation and emotional abuse, it spikes your stress hormone, cortisol, to levels that are pretty much identical to what soldiers experience in an actual combat zone. And this is so important to understand. To your brain, there is no difference. A relentless emotional threat, like being gaslit or constantly put down, it triggers the exact same survival alarms as a physical one. It's a battle, and it's happening inside your body 24/7. And the fallout from that battle, oh, it is immense. We're talking about crushing anxiety, deep depression, not being able to sleep, your concentration just shattered into a million pieces. A lot of people develop symptoms that are a mirror image of PTSD. Your immune system even starts to break down. It's your body just screaming for help in the only way it knows how. So all those things we just listed, let's just get one thing perfectly straight. They are not, and I mean not, a sign that you're weak. They're not some kind of character flaw. Nope, they are biological, neurological, survival reactions. That's it. It is your brain doing its job perfectly, desperately trying to keep you alive in a place that it sees as life-threatening. But then what? What happens after you get out? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. Researchers have found this phenomenon that goes way beyond just, bouncing back. Get this. Research now shows that a huge number of people who go through trauma, we're talking somewhere between half and 2/3 of them, don't just get back to normal. They don't just recover. They actually transform. And this whole idea, it has a name. It's called post-traumatic growth, or PTG for short. And the central idea here is that it's not about healing back to the person you were. It's about a deep, positive change that lets you operate on a completely new level. We hear the word resilience all the time, and that's great. It's about bouncing back, right? Restoring who you were. But post-traumatic growth, that's a whole different ballgame. It's what happens when you're so shattered that you can't just patch things up. You have to rebuild from scratch. And often, that new version of you is way stronger than the original ever was. Okay, so this leads us to something that feels totally backwards. It's a paradox that's really at the heart of this entire transformation. Just let that sink in for a second. The people who experience the most profound life-altering growth are often the ones who were completely leveled, the ones whose entire view of the world was just dismantled. So if that's you, if you're sitting in that wreckage right now, you might actually be in the most powerful position to change. Now, I have to be crystal clear here. This is not some cheesy, everything happens for a reason garbage. We are not glorifying suffering. The pain you went through was real, and it was not some kind of gift. And here's the key. These two things can exist at the exact same time. You can have PTSD and post-traumatic growth living side by side. Your brain is amazing. It can hold two truths at once. This experience almost destroyed me, and this experience changed me in ways that I wouldn't trade. One doesn't cancel out the other. So, okay, if this kind of growth is actually possible, then how in the world does it happen? What does rebuilding actually look like day to day? Well, researchers have pinpointed 5 main areas. Survivors often find this totally new appreciation for life. Like a good cup of coffee just hits different, Their relationships change. They just can't do superficial anymore. They find a strength inside themselves they had no idea was there. They start seeing new paths, new possibilities for their life, and their core beliefs, what they value, become clearer than ever. But where does it all begin? It's almost never a big dramatic moment. It's more like a deep down physical exhaustion with being treated badly. It's a quiet little click inside when your nervous system just finally says, I'm done, no more. The price you're paying just becomes too high to ignore. And this is where we have to separate two ways of thinking. There's intrusive rumination. That's when the trauma just plays on a loop in your head, and it keeps you completely stuck. But then there's deliberate rumination. That's when you actively, consciously work to make sense of what happened. And that is one of the biggest engines for growth. So what does this look like in real life? Well, survivors who grow start setting boundaries. Not because it's trendy, but because it's a form of healthcare. They reach out for support, to friends, to therapists, because having someone else confirm your reality is absolutely vital. And they do that hard work of deliberately processing the past. And that brings us to our last section. And honestly, it might be the most powerful one. It's all about changing how we see what's left behind, seeing it not as damage, but as pure wisdom. So listen, if you still feel anxious sometimes, if you have a hard time trusting people, if you flinch when a voice gets loud, you are not broken. Those aren't glitches. Those are receipts. They are proof that your brain did its job absolutely perfectly. It kept you safe when you needed it most. And what's amazing is that over time, those marks start to change. They stop being just scars and they turn into maps. They become your internal compass, showing you every road you've already walked down, and more importantly, they give you a crystal clear guide on where you will never, ever go again. That's not damage, that's wisdom. So in the end, surviving this stuff isn't about being unbreakable. It's about finding out that when you do break, you actually get a choice in how you put the pieces back together. The person you build can be stronger and wiser and more you than you ever were before. And that's not just a nice thought. That's not a fairy tale. That's neuroscience.